and welcome on behalf of your USCA host committee. I want to talk a little bit about this year's election process. This process has more significance than any other over the last 35 years. We've made a lot of gains, but come November 2016, there's a lot at stake for us. Your responsibility and mine are clear. They come down to two things. One, know the issues at both the national and local levels, and two, vote. Today, I have the honor to introduce a South Florida legislator who is a friend to our movement. U.S. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz was elected to represent Florida's 23rd District, which extends as far south as Miami Beach to Hollywood, Florida. Debbie worked with her South Florida congressional colleagues to secure $50 million in emergency funding for the AIDS Drug Assistance Program to reduce wait lists and other service barriers. In 2007, she championed women and children who were in jeopardy of losing access to care and treatment and supportive services under the Ryan White Part D program. She has dedicated her life's works to South Florida and continues to support our work. Please join me in welcoming our friend, U.S. Congresswoman and the accomplished former chair of the National Democratic Committee, Ms. Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you so much. Thank you, William. For those of you not from South Florida, welcome, and welcome to Florida's 23rd Congressional District. I appreciate the kind words, William, and all the work that you do for Broward County in ensuring that health care is accessible to everyone in our community, no matter where they live or who they love. I'm very proud of the work that you and the entire Broward Host Committee, William, have done to bring this important conference to our area. I'm also grateful that despite everything that we are experiencing in South Florida with the Zika virus, that the U.S. Conference on AIDS decided to keep your conference in the 23rd Congressional District of Florida, which I proudly represent in the United States House of Representatives. So thank you very much. Thank you. This past June marked 35 years since the first documented case of AIDS, and the AIDS epidemic has subsequently changed us forever. Since that time, we've invested billions of dollars in research, education, prevention, and treatment. For 20 of those 35 years, the U.S. Conference on AIDS has been the central gathering place for advocates, activists, case managers, medical professionals, and those living with AIDS to come together, share best practices, and reaffirm that ordinary people can and do affect monumental change. Thank you to NMAC, also formerly known as the National Minority AIDS Council, for not shying away from the difficult questions and discussions about the impact that race has on ending the HIV epidemic in America. Thank you for continuing to educate, advocate, collaborate, and compel for health equity within communities of color, and for your tireless quest to bring an end to the HIV epidemic. Because of the extraordinary work of everyone in this room, we've moved from a period of unprecedented fear, anxiety, and the loss of those we treasured and those we loved, to a period of bravery, courage, and life. As a member of Congress who serves on the House Appropriations Committee, I want you all to know that you have a partner in me. You have a partner in fighting the hurtful and dangerous stigma. Thank you very much. Thank you. And you always will have a partner in me. You have a partner in fighting the hurtful and dangerous stigma held against our HIV-positive brothers and sisters, in fighting the stigma that prevents too many from getting tested, and the stigma that has led to a 30-year arbitrary and discriminatory ban on blood donations. That must end. As the LGBT community rallied together after the horrific tragedy of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, we once again were reminded that hatred pervades and arbitrary stigma even plagues our public health policies. I am proud to have fought for billions in funding for the Ryan White program, a program that was created in the memory of a young man right here in Florida. Each year, the Ryan White program serves over 500,000 Americans, more than 50% of all Americans living today with HIV. Nearly 3/4 of their clients are racial and ethnic minorities, and nearly 2/3 are living at or below the poverty level. Remarkably, in 2014, 81% of Ryan White clients achieved viral suppression, and over 80% were retained in HIV care. That is remarkable success. It is a model program. I'm also proud to have supported the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, or HOPWA program. As you all know, and yes, they deserve a round of applause as well. As you all know, housing remains one of the greatest needs of those living with HIV and AIDS, and HOPWA addresses this need by working at the too often dangerous intersection of homelessness and access to health care. Thank you very much. And thanks to the Affordable Care Act, millions of insured Americans are able to get tested free of charge. Americans who were uninsured are now able to access affordable health care coverage, and no American will ever again be denied health insurance because of their HIV status. That is a critical protection that we must fight to the mat to preserve. Medicaid is the largest payer for HIV care, and the expansion of Medicaid under the ACA has been pivotal in increasing access to primary care services and HIV treatment. Here in Florida, our governor and state legislature cruelly refused to expand Medicaid to the detriment of far too many of our neediest citizens. That's why elections matter. It's just one of those battles that we continue to fight, and as this group knows, those battles are never, ever easy. So although we can all be proud of all the progress we've made over the past 3 decades, there is still much more work to do to bring an end to the AIDS epidemic, particularly within communities of color. Because AIDS is not only a public health issue, it is a civil rights and a human rights issue. Let's make sure that we understand that. I know everyone here certainly does. We know the stats, but they bear repeating. The number of new HIV diagnoses fell 19% from 2005 to 2014, but the rate of diagnoses rose by 24% among Hispanic, gay, and bisexual men, and by 22% among Black, gay, and bisexual men. Additionally, while we've seen progress with the rate of new infections among Black women, they remain disproportionately impacted. In 2014, over 5,000 Black women were diagnosed with HIV, compared to an estimated 1,400 Hispanic women and 1,500 white women. We have to do more to save our sisters. We must do more to make sure that there is equity in the treatment and prevention of HIV and AIDS. AIDS is the #1 cause of death for Black women aged 25 to 44. I need that to sink in with everyone for a moment. That is unacceptable. And here in Florida, while our governor may refute the facts, this year Florida led the nation in new HIV infections. We like to be at the top, but not with those kinds of indicators. Of the counties that I represent here in South Florida, Miami-Dade and Broward were numbers 1 and 2 in the U.S. for new HIV infections per 100,000 residents. So thank you for bringing the conference to our area and shining the spotlight on South Florida, because our work is far from over. We need to lock arms, move forward, and work even harder than we have before over the last 35 years, and you're 20. I've spent my career fighting for common sense reforms and legislation. There are common sense solutions that we haven't exhausted, and we are not doing enough. We know that expanding access to primary care services saves lives. We know that abstinence-only education does not work, yet Republicans in Washington continue to insist that that is where the bulk of our funding goes when it comes to making sure we can bring down infection and educate people about safe reproductive practices. They clearly have their heads firmly implanted in the ground. We know needle exchanges are a necessary public health tool in fighting this epidemic. We know that to fight the epidemic, we also must address issues of homelessness, mental illness, and poverty. And we know that we must break down every physical, psychological, and social barrier that bars all Americans from getting the care they need and deserve. Equally important, as William opened in my introduction, we know that unless we have policymakers willing to fight for the issues that matter most to our communities, these staggering stats will only get worse. We can't continue to be electing people who are firmly committed to being obstacles in the path of our progress, which is why we must make our voices heard at the ballot box in 55 days from now. We have to vote with our hearts. We have to make sure that we don't just talk at conferences like these. We need to turn our talk into action, and we need to hold policymakers who vote differently than our priorities and impede our progress. We need to hold them accountable. If you care, and I know you do like I do, about LGBT equality at the workplace, in the housing market, and in your everyday life, then you must vote. If you care about ending health disparities among communities of color and providing quality and affordable health care for everyone, then vote and take others with you to vote. If you care about ending the AIDS epidemic, then vote like your life depends on it or someone you love's life depends on it, because it does. It does, my friends. We have important choices to make this November. This election will determine the future of our nation for generations to come. Do we want to build on the progress we've made over these past 8 years, or simply roll the dice and take our chances? My friends in the U.S. Conference on AIDS, you've worked too hard and come too far in this fight to leave anything to chance. In my life, there has never been, in my estimation, an election more important than the one in front of us. And I know that so many of us say and have heard that before. I have never felt like I do in this election cycle. It's so much more than that I disagree on the issues with the person in the other party who has been nominated as that party's candidate for president. I have never felt like I do today, and I know this is a nonprofit and I don't want to jeopardize your 501c3 status, but we have to make sure that we don't let people who would do our nation harm, who would affect our way of life, our nation's values, our constitutional principles, who is committed to misogyny and bigotry and discrimination and turning us backwards and sending the people who make this country great through our diversity and who don't embrace our nation's tradition of being a nation of immigrants. We need to make sure that candidates like that, who shall remain nameless, never get anywhere near the White House or the presidency. We need to protect future generations and shrink the numbers of AIDS infections, shrink the number of HIV infections, ensure that we can promote equality. We've made so much progress, and we're on the precipice of making more, or on the precipice of turning the clock backward. I know which direction that this room and I want to go. We want to go forward, not backward, and we have to work our hearts out over the next 55 days to make sure that we don't unravel all the progress that we've been able to make. On to victory and more progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman. That concludes our program for the day. Don't forget Last Men Standing in this room tonight at 6:30.